This is the Mercedes S63 E-Performance, and no matter which way you look at it, it's a car that on paper makes zero sense. It's got a big, thirsty 4-litre twin-turbo V8 and also a little electric motor for efficiency. It was a big, luxurious limousine until they fitted it with sporty suspension.
And they've tuned the chassis to make it as agile as possible, even though it was originally designed as a luxury cruiser.
Yeah, this thing makes about as much sense as putting sunscreen on a snowman, and yet I can't help but love it. Honestly, the reason I like it is precisely because it's stupid. How stupid? This powertrain is nuts.
According to AMG, it makes a mighty 802 PS. Torque is even more insane, a faintly ridiculous 1,429 Newton meters.
It'll do 0 to 62 miles an hour in 3.3 seconds, and flat out, apparently it'll hit 180 miles an hour, although I feel like that's quite a conservative number. I'm sure it'll go faster.
How? The E-Performance badge is a clue. It basically means that alongside the internal combustion engine, in this case a 4-litre biturbo V8 connected to a 9-speed automatic gearbox, there's a 10.5 kilowatt-hour battery pack at the rear powering a 190 PS electric motor hooked up to its own 2-speed transmission.
They work together to develop that frankly absurd power figure, but they can also work separately. There's a little knob down here on the steering wheel, and if you twist that into EL, suddenly we're running in all electric mode. All goes quiet and calm, and you got yourself a big electric S-Class. The battery isn't massive. They reckon you can get a range of up to 20 miles in EV mode, which sounds a bit ambitious to me, but it's an interesting feature, and you can even control the amount of brake regen through this screen, or put it into hold mode to hold on to whatever battery you have left for use at a later time. Right, that's enough of that.
Handy, sure. Not that you'll be using it much. Why would you? To save money on fuel? Unlikely, when you'll have spent nearly £186,000 buying your S63 in the first place. Is it for reducing emissions? Well, maybe, if you conveniently forget that there's also a giant V8 under the bonnet, bringing you a massive dopamine hit every time you press the pedal. No, for this one, you really have to park your brain cells at the gate and logic be damned. But speaking of damned, it's also damned attractive. Subtle, but with enough menace about it to let people know that there's more to this car than meets the eye. The big Panamericana grille is a giveaway, as is the Autotrader badge on the bonnet, and the carbon-lined air intakes on either side, feeding cool air to a set of carbon ceramic brakes behind 21-inch forged center-locking wheels. There are carbon door mirrors, body-colored side skirts, and pop-out door handles at the side, as well as 2 charging flaps, one for the battery and one for petrol. The back, meanwhile, is as understated as you'd expect, except for the quad exhaust and red outlined S63 badge. Those who know will definitely know.
On the inside of the S63, there is quite a lot to talk about, especially up front. But I'm not going to bother today. I mean, who wants to hear about the fact it's got a really good infotainment system, or a 3D effect driver display, or ambient lighting, plus illuminated seatbelt plugs? I mean, I could talk about the fact that it's got probably the best car stereo in the game, with a motorized set of tweeters, plus built-in vibrating speakers in the seats to pound you in the kidneys in time to the music. But I'm not going to do that. I could talk about some of the more questionable things as well, like the fairly pointless fingerprint reader that loads up different driver profiles, or the annoyingly janky buttons below that main screen, or the fake buttons for adjusting your seats. But I'm not going to do that. Today, I'm going to talk about the rear, because it is absolutely spectacular. Look at the technology. I've got 2 different screens behind the headrest for adjusting pretty much everything in the car. And if for some reason your finger's not quite long enough to adjust them, just do this, pull the armrest down, and you've got yourself a deployable tablet that lets you control the screens by moving your finger like a remote control. Pointless, but spectacular. Also, look at these blinds. I've got a blind for the sunroof up there. I've got a blind for my rear screen, and then a blind for my side screen. If you like blinds, you're gonna absolutely love this car. But I'm not finished, because this actually has one of the best cabins for this particular reason. The finest pillows in the game, and a seat that reclines like you're on a business class flight. It's magnificent. And then they go and ruin it all by giving the car 800 horsepower. To be fair, you don't have to use all 800 horsepower. If you exercise restraint, if you exercise quite a lot of restraint, it's actually not a bad cruiser. I'll take it out of Sport Plus mode, knock it into comfort, and what I'm discovering is that it's actually doing quite a passable impression of an S-Class. I think a lot of that is down to the seats, which in this car are really comfortable. There are so many super powerful saloons that are a little bit too grabby in their seats, a bit too supportive, if you know what I mean. These seats, fantastic, loads of space to relax, and when you go around the corner, it's got motorized bolsters that kick in to hold you in place. It's quite a weird feeling, suddenly being cuddled out of nowhere when you go around the bend, but that's actually really nice. The massage feature is really good as well. There's a lot of variety in the programs, and they feel really effective. And I know earlier I said I wouldn't bang on about it, but the stereo in this car is second to none. Burmester, you are killing it out here. It sounds fantastic. Something I could complain about, well, in fact I will complain about it, is the suspension. It's not quite as comfortable as what you get on some rivals. In Sport Plus mode, yeah, definitely too hard for these British B roads. It's a lot better in comfort mode, but it's still not quite as sophisticated or as advanced as the systems that you get in some rival cars. For example, the Porsche Panamera or Audi RS e-tron GT. But once you get used to it, it ain't bad. The gearbox in this car is interesting. Well, gearboxes, because you get two. There's a 9-speed automatic that handles torque from the internal combustion engine, and a separate 2-speed gearbox for the electric motor. It feels like quite a complicated way of doing things, and I have heard on the grapevine that some people have found the gear change in this car to be a little bit less smooth than it should be, but in my experience, it hasn't been too bad. Maybe Mercedes have sorted out that issue with a bit of a software update. Right, that's enough comfort. Sport Plus, let's go. Yes! It's hilarious, it's savage, is what it is. Can't believe I'm in an S-Class with this much power. The powertrain really defines this car's character. 800 plus horsepower. Well, it's no joke. It really is no joke. You know what's really weird though? I expected after hearing those numbers to be terrified of it. Honestly though, I'm not. If anything, I kind of want more power.
The S63 also sounds surprisingly good, from the outside at least. It makes a deep, throaty noise, and the turbos, if you stick a microphone into the engine bay, also sound refreshingly vocal. Sadly, the level of refinement inside the car means you barely hear any of it. So Mercedes, in their infinite wisdom, have added a bit of synthesized noise. And sadly, it's not the best.
Okay, have a listen to this. Can you hear that? That is an absolute joke. That is the sound of a synthesized V8, which bears no relation to the real one. I mean, listen, you've literally got a 4-litre twin-turbo V8 2 feet away from you, a quad exhaust system like 5 feet behind you, and they've chosen to neuter it and instead give us this. What? Oh, I think it broke. Maybe that's a good thing. That wasn't supposed to happen. I'm kind of glad it did.
It does make you wonder whether having the outside sound is actually worth it. Why pay around £185,000 for other people to hear your exhaust when you don't get the same pleasure? Still, it handles itself pretty well in the twisty stuff. There's a good flow to the car, and despite it being absolutely massive, it feels happy to be threaded through even tight, twisty corners.
It's actually quite good fun. It drives really well. The rear wheel steering definitely helps. It makes it feel a lot smaller than it is in reality. The active anti-roll stabilization just keeps the body level, so it doesn't feel as if you're driving the thing on the door handles. And the carbon ceramic brakes are very, very strong. You need those on a car this big, this heavy, and of course this fast. Yes, it is good, this thing. It shouldn't be, but it is.
So how do we sum up the S63? It's a car that shouldn't make sense. They've made the S-Class, a comfy luxury cruiser, a bit less comfortable, a bit less cruisy, and therefore objectively a bit worse. And surely there are better cars that would have benefited from having that raw AMG spirit injected than something this big and something this heavy. It's far from logical. But then the best cars are often totally illogical.
It's a car that is very, very wrong, and yet it feels so right.